Okay, so thank you so much. So I was about to introduce the event. For those who are in the United States, I think we all understand it's Black History Month, the month when we celebrate the Black leaders or the people in the Black community who are leading, trying to provide solutions to the issues affecting humanity in general. So we decided to have these and to celebrate, of course, and show what we're doing, and have the Black leaders themselves talking to us and having a good conversation with them, and we see what will be the way forward. So to introduce myself, I am Elias Muhatia Shamala. I know Elias, some people call it Elias, others call it Elias. So I hold no I hold no problem with the pronunciation. Shamala is the name that I was given when I was born, and Muhati was the name of my grandfather. I was a very great and wise man. So I am the senior data analyst at Reactionpower, a digital marketing company that is based in the US, even though I work from here in Nairobi, Kenya. I'll be your moderator, I'll be your facilitator today. We shall have presentations coming from the people who are showing their faces on the screen right now. We shall have about 30 minutes of presentation from Valentine Chiwome. Valentine Chiwome, if I do a brief introduction of him before he talks himself, he's a senior software engineer at Google's self-driving car sister company called Waymo. He has also experience in large-scale systems that are driven by large datasets and AI. He is passionate about developing and enabling AI systems that are fair and about finding and removing bias from the artificial intelligence systems. And then also another face is Toren. Toren is a technical product manager at NVIDIA's AI infrastructure division and works on the Rapids open source projects. He helped people understand the whys and hows of Rapids, as well as the use of Rapids to help others innovate across industry verticals. Torin is also part of the leadership team at the Black NVIDIANS Network, in abbreviations BNN, and a member of the Data Ethics for All think tank community. He loves creating impactful capabilities with new tech that people, businesses, and organizations need to thrive in the near future. We shall also have a Clubhouse follow-up discussion that will start after our discussion here. And there we shall meet the likes of Felix and also Echeme Emole. I hope I pronounced the name well. Echeme Emole is the founder of the Afropolitan Network, the largest Black community in audio spaces powered by authentic, diverse voices centered around the Black experience. Afropolitan offers a network that provides highly curated Black content run by subject matter experts and expert moderators with cultural awareness, sensitivities, and proximity. So that is about the presentations today. We shall have a 30 minutes presentation from Valentine. After that, we shall have a question and answer session that will comprise both the comments, questions from the audience, and also from the panel that is sitting with us today. So allow me to go direct to today's discussion in 2 minutes, and then I hand over to Valentine Chiwome. I hope you prepared the presentation so that when I give it to you, we can really dive into it. So first, I should say good morning, those who are in the States, good afternoon, those who are in other parts of the world, and also good evening to some of us who are in Africa. This is a Black History Month, and that's what we're celebrating. We're celebrating Black leaders who are playing a role towards the well-being of humanity. And in this case, we shall be focusing on technology, and that is artificial intelligence. So as we all know, technology is causing a profound shift in all the dimensions of our lives. An example that I was thinking about is in the past, or traditionally, we've been told that you need to have a very firm handshake in readiness for a job interview. But nowadays, we're doing our interviews on the internet through Zoom, Skype, and other applications. So that's already one form of a transition. So we are called upon to adjust to these adjustments or these transformations, lest we be left behind. We have technology replacing the human labor in different forms. There is already studies showing that more than 40% of jobs in the United States are likely to be replaced by technology in the coming days. This is quite a big thing to discuss because we don't know the social economic impacts that it will have on the population. But when we were thinking about the job replacement by machines, we're also thinking of the Black community that is significantly affected by discrimination, bias, and all that is systemic, but again, it has been transferred to our artificial intelligence systems. And that's what will form our discussion today. How can we come up with a fair artificial intelligence, or what are we already doing in that sector? I know that there are a lot of efforts being done already, and we are part of that, and we shall be happy to discuss. So the main areas that the Black community are being affected, we're talking of the significant bias in the justice system, the health sector, and also job recruitment, education, and many more. So today we shall delve deeper into job recruitment, and I know the discussion might extend to other aspects. So just before I talk too much and until I look like a presenter, allow me to welcome Valentine Chiwome to take us through what it means, fair artificial intelligence, and what it holds for us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, thanks a lot, Elias, for the introduction and for setting the stage. So yeah, as Elias mentioned, I'm going to be presenting about artificial intelligence in the context of fairness, and then the goal here is to make it a discussion. So I kind of give a seed structure of where we are, and then we can build on that and talk about these issues. So I'm just going to share my screen now. Okay, so yeah, you already know my name is Valentine, and I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence and in the context of fairness and marginalized groups who mostly focus on Black people. But the concepts apply to any marginalized or underrepresented groups in these AI systems. So a little bit about me. I am from Zimbabwe, currently living in California. I'm a software engineer at Waymo, which is, a Google self-driving project. And before that, I was in Google search ads. And, having said that, I have to say I'm not speaking on behalf of my employer, so don't quote me. I'm just, speaking my personal views on this topic. Okay, so why this presentation? So I think at the end of this presentation, I want us to, I want us to convince each other that AI systems are vulnerable to bias, and this bias can cause damage in the real world. And really key word here is real world, is actual lives that get affected by that bias. And then we'll end by talking a little bit about some of the things we can do to reduce or manage, or at least be aware of that bias. So this talk will, sound negative about AI, but I'm not trying to convince you that AI is evil and must be avoided, or AI researchers, have, are ill-intended. I believe it's the opposite. I believe AI is a powerful tool that we should definitely harness to make the world a better place. I believe there are a lot of well-meaning AI researchers out there trying their best to make sure they build systems that work. Okay, so what is AI? Right. So AI is pretty much a system or computer program that exhibits, traits that we usually associate with the human mind, such as, learning or problem solving. Before, when computers started, they were pretty much what we call calculators today. But with AI, they do more sophisticated things now. For example, you can unlock your iPhone using your face now. That's pretty much, AI recognizing, oh, this is the owner of the iPhone. And, that's smart in a way. And AI is growing a lot, and a lot of experts believe that it will affect every aspect of society. And in a lot of ways, it already has. It's everywhere. I mean, you look at your Twitter feed, that's AI. You look to the left, to the right, there is some level of AI being used in a system you are interacting with. So this is a quote from Fei Fei Li. She's one of the leading researchers in AI. So let's look at a few examples of, the use of AI in the real world. So one is face recognition, which I already alluded to, is a security feature for iPhones today. So you give a computer a face and it tells you, oh, this is so and so. Or you give it two images and say, oh, this is the same person. Medicine, a lot of AI is being used to simulate the impact of drugs on people before they are actually administered to people. AI is being used in drug development. I'll briefly dig a little deeper into that, in a few minutes. Hiring, which we will use as our, example to walk through the development of an AI program. So people are using AI right now to filter candidates and, decide which candidates get to the next stage and which candidates are not so promising for the job. And, criminal justice, we can tie this up with face recognition. And I'm sure most of us have seen in movies that when the FBI is looking for a criminal, they use these cameras at airports and everywhere to find criminals that are, that they're looking for. And They use face recognition for that. And I think this is all great if things are working, but if they don't work, we have a problem. Okay, so starting out on a positive note, so these are some of the recent developments in AI that I think are pretty awesome. One is AlphaFold, which is an AI developed by DeepMind. So what it pretty much does is it predicts the shape of a protein given amino acids. Proteins are made from amino acids. And so basically what's important is that most of the body functions that we have are determined by proteins, and they're determined by shapes of proteins. So if we can predict the structure of proteins, we can help understand disease, which is when proteins stop working. I'm simplifying a lot, and I'm sure people more aware and more experienced in biology, would explain it differently. And then self-driving cars. So if you Torren, you live in the Bay Area, we have self-driving cars on the roads, and this is a pretty difficult task, and AI has managed to solve that problem. So we can see that AI has a lot of potential and can do really seemingly magical things. So how does AI work? So I'm pivoting a little bit here to machine learning, which is one of the fastest growing branches of AI right now. And in talking, people interchange these two terms. They don't really mean the same thing, but it's it's the same ideas. So machine learning or AI, you can think of it as two things: data. You have some data, which is some examples, and then you apply your intentions on that data, or you use that data to achieve a certain goal. So you start out with data and you apply intentions. Intentions will be an algorithm that you apply on that data. And then boom, you end up with a model that can be used on people, in the real world. And this is the power of AI, which is, your model will have real world impact and can make a difference, if it does the right thing on actual human lives. But at the same time, it becomes a double-edged sword. If it doesn't work, it's quite costly. And now talking about bias, even the earlier stages of this process involve humans. So the data we use for AI is generated by humans. So this data could be tweets, news articles, written by a journalist, Wikipedia entries, you name it. And these are humans creating this data. And now when we talk about bias, you can already see, we know humans are biased. We are biased. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. And because we are using data generated by humans, we are already importing bias into AI. And the paradox here is that's the reason why AI works, but that's also the reason it doesn't. And now algorithms are also developed by people. It's a person who is looking at the data, figuring out, okay, how can I make this data useful? It's an actual human there. And so this is where our bias comes from. Our data comes from humans. Our algorithms come from humans. So when we include humans, you start to ask, what can go wrong, right? And this is a quote from Sundar Pichai, who is CEO of Alphabet, one of the most powerful voices in AI, who says algorithms and data sets can reflect, reinforce, or reduce unfair biases. And I would say, most of the time it's reinforced. I don't remember who said that, AI amplifies our intentions. So it's basically a more efficient expression of ourselves. So if we have bias, AI will just like double down on that bias and take it to the extremes. So I'll give an example. Google Translate. I'm sure most of you know how it works. You give it a sentence in one language, it translates it into another language. Wonderful, right? You can use this a lot for different reasons, tourism, and a lot of use cases you can imagine. And the way these translation models, they call them, work is first they have to understand language, understand quote unquote. And the way to do that is to know words that are related to each other and words that are not. So the way they do that is, they crawl the web, they look for news articles, they look for publications, they look for whatever is on the internet and try to understand what words occur together and what words don't. And from that, they can create relationships between words. For example, Obama and president would be close together because they are related words. And boom, this is what the AI understood. So it understood, okay, masculine and strong and doctor are related. At the same time, feminine and nurse and beautiful are also related. So you can see that Google Translate picked up gender bias that exists in our world today, which is, people tend to associate a doctor as a man and not a woman. And, men are considered strong, but, women are strong too, right? And these are the biases we don't want to pick. We don't want our AI models to think like this, because now if you are using this model to predict whether someone is going to be a good doctor or not, it will probably hurt women. Women will have, lesser chance of being rated high by this AI. So this was fixed back in 2018. There's a blog post about it. I have it at the end of the slides if you want to follow up. So this is just one example, and Google Translate is already developed by some of the most talented AI researchers, right? So it just goes to show how difficult it can be to predict what the AI will pick up and what it will do, And another recent example, a few months ago, a company called OpenAI, one of the most talented AI researchers out there, they developed a model, a machine learning model called GPT-3. And what it does is you give it a seed sentence, and then it generates text based on that sentence. And it's pretty impressive. To look at what it generates. But one researcher was working with it and realized that if you include Muslims in your seed sentence, it generates text about violence. Now this is biased, probably because news is biased. So the model just picked whatever was in the news, right? And it didn't pick good stories that involve the word Muslims, and the model is biased, and that's terrible. That's terrible that it would pigeonhole other groups like this. So I can go on and on. Every other day something happens, and an AI model, people realize that, oh, this AI model is biased. But I hope with these two examples from some of the leading AI researchers go to demonstrate that, getting unbiased AI is very difficult, and bias is everywhere. Some of the bias we haven't found it yet, and we haven't noticed it yet, but it's there. It's almost a guarantee that everything is so biased. So I will now give an example of how we can use AI in hiring, actually how AI is being used for hiring. And we go through the process, right, and see where things can go wrong through that process, and how we can end up with the results I just showed in this slide and the previous one. Okay, so there's this company called HigherView. What they do is they started out as a video platform. So an employer would set up an interview, give it to this company, and then candidates take interviews online. Their interview is recorded, and then the employer or the hiring manager comes back and looks at the video and decides, oh, do I want to invite this person to an on-site interview or not, right? So you can see many advantages of this, more flexibility, for example, across time zones. You don't have to wait up at night to interview someone from a different time zone, among other things you can imagine. So this is all great, looks wonderful. And they started, getting all these videos of people interviewing, and these labels saying, oh, this interview didn't go well, this interview went well. And engineers get excited and say, oh my God, we can create an AI model that looks at a video and decides, oh, should this person go to the next stage or not? Right? Sounds good. And probably employers would be happy that they have to look at less candidates. They don't have to waste their time on, candidates they are not going to hire anyway, right? Saves time, saves everybody time. You interview and right away you get a response. That's good. You know early. You don't have to wait for bad news. So you can sell this idea pretty well, right? So let's see how they do it. So to train the AI model, the employer takes their current employees and their performance and say, oh, this is a stellar employee, this is average, this one is borderline, and so forth and so forth, or this one we had to fire, right? They give these details to this company, and then this company creates a model that's tailored to find the most promising candidate for that job. Now, things are already, it's already a slippery slope now, because one, the employer has to choose which employee data to give to this company. And there's a human somewhere, deciding, okay, you go, or even if it's, randomized or whatever, but first you have to select which employees participate in that assessment, for the training data. And also you are using employees you already have, right? So that's a bias there. If you have a homogeneous set of employees, you are probably going to end up scoring people like them higher and people not like them pretty low. So this is our data, for the AI model, employees doing the job. And then what is the algorithm? Well, the algorithm is they look at, what someone says, how they say it, and build a model that tries to predict success based on that. And you can already see, okay, so you want to know what they say, so you need a speech recognition system. Well, people have different accents. Are you going to understand everybody? Is that model going to understand everybody? Right? Maybe, maybe not. How they say it, well, is how I talk a good reflection of my competence? It's things are already starting to get questionable there. And yeah, this is our algorithm. So this slide shows the percentage of Black employees at different companies. So for this hypothetical case, for a hypothetical case, let's say Twitter wants to use this service, right? Twitter has 2% Black employees, and for the same reason, let's assume that this is HigherView is a tech company, so probably their distribution or their proportion of Black people is kind of like Twitter as well. I would be surprised if the numbers are so different from here. So two reasonable assumptions. So how does this look? Well, our data is 2% Black people. Our algorithm is developed, by 2% Black people. You can already see how things can go wrong here, right? Because if the model never saw I don't know, my cousin from deep in the villages of Zimbabwe in their training data, and they hear them talk and they see how they conduct themselves, it's probably not going to give them a high score because it has never seen, that example before. So, I hope this illustrates how and where we can end up with bias in our AI systems. I must say that I did not use HigherView myself, so I do not have first-hand experience, but I think it illustrates, at least as a thought experiment, how and where things can go wrong. So we've seen how things can go wrong. The question is, what can we do? What now, right? Should we just lose hope, put our hands in the air? And maybe not, because this problem will not go away. And there are a few things that companies can do and society can do in general to figure out, to make sure we reduce the amount of bias in our system. So the first question really is, before you build a model, ask yourself, or engineers should ask themselves, okay, should this model be developed in the first place? Or companies should ask themselves those questions. So I'll give you an example. There's this company I came across called Festion, and what they do is they go on YouTube, they look at YouTube videos, they extract faces from those YouTube videos, and they apply some algorithm on the video and the faces in the video and try to predict something about those faces. So one of the things is this person smart or not, just by looking at the video and the faces and whatever the people are doing in that video. Or are these people a threat? Now you can already start to wonder, can you really tell whether someone is smart or not by looking at their face? I don't think so. I think smart people look very different, and I don't think you can use faces to determine if someone is smart or not. And also, it's already a breeding ground for bias, right? Because fundamentally people look different, and and you're going to hurt some group of people for sure, right? And so I last night I actually made a query on Bing. I went to Bing and said, okay, so if this company, this is a small startup, and it's trying to predict whether someone is smart or not from their face. I thought, oh, Bing, like search engines have some of the largest data sets in the world. They're some of the smartest AI algorithms in the world. So usually, like a search engine is the benchmark. You know, if a search engine cannot do something, usually other models cannot do it too. So I went on Bing and said, okay, show me a smart person, and this is what I got, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if, our company I just showed you above, thinks the same. This is what Bing thinks is a smart person. And if you think about it, you can see how it ends up here. It's reading news articles, it's reading Reddit posts, and and so forth. But then there are other smart people who don't look like the people on this slide, right? And if you give that model Neil deGrasse Tyson or Madame Curie, well, it will probably not think she's smart. And so another question is my data representative? Well, most of the data is generated from YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, all these internet sites. And, you need the internet to be able to contribute to those sites. And this is a Wikipedia. This is what I found on Wikipedia in terms of internet penetration in different parts of the world. So you can already see that there is not homogeneous representation on the internet for different groups of people. So someone from Central Africa is not well represented on the internet. So of course, when you search on Bing for a smart person, it's not going to show you a face from Central Africa. And by the way, when I made that search, I changed my location to Ghana, and that's what I got. So it has nothing to do with location. So the wrong way to solve this problem is, let's just get more data from different parts of the world and make our data set representative. So this is, for example, what China did. They are running, surveillance programs, and they need face recognition for that. And they went to the Zimbabwean government and said, hey, can we have black faces? And the Zimbabwean government did give them black faces, but that's just the wrong way to do it, because it's first, it's probably borderline. I'm not sure citizens are happy about that. Would be happier to know that their faces are being shipped to China each time you renew your passport, and if you go to China today, all those cameras probably already know you, and that's really not a good thing. So, we should not just take shortcuts to solve data problems. And, question the intentions of your algorithm. If you only want to increase revenue, be careful, because you will probably optimize for countries with higher GDP per capita than the rest of the countries. So really, a lot of questions to ask themselves. Companies should ask themselves. Another question is, should more people be involved in developing this AI? And it's usually always true. Include more minorities, because they usually understand some things dominant groups don't, and they bring different perspectives. So, for example, in the China case, if there was a minority there, they would probably say, it's probably not the right thing to just take off faces from Zimbabwe. and test your algorithms on subgroups. So this is a few years ago, a study done to benchmark face recognition models from Microsoft, IBM, and Face++. And you can see the darker the skin, so the numbers there are the error rates, how bad a model is. So it's the darker the skin, the worse the model is. And for IBM and Face++, like on Black women, it's almost a coin toss. It's like 50-50% chance that it gets you right. And that's really bad if that model is used to identify criminals at an airport, because you end up stopping, a lot of innocent people, and people won't be happy. Okay, so my conclusions: AI will dominate our social and professional systems. So it's easy to, take its biases with it. Fixing AI bias is critical to ensuring fairness in the 21st century. Otherwise, we just, transport whatever unfairness we have today into the future through AI. And, when we build models, let's build with, not for. And by that, bring all groups to the table when designing AI systems, so that you can have different opinions. So these are some of the resources out there for increasing Black participation in AI. African Institute for Mathematical Sciences. Please, refer other people to take a look and apply. If they're interested, Data Science Nigeria, they do a lot of AI education, AI competition, just to, get more Black people involved. Black in AI, it's exactly that. Get more people involved in AI. Algorithmic Justice League, the same thing. They try to police algorithms to make sure they are fair. And, you can also report biases that you experience yourself. So, for example, I had one case where all my friends in my photos were considered one person because the algorithm was just bad, for those types of faces. And you can report on that website, and yeah, these are some of the references that you can follow up on and dig deeper into this topic. So I went way over time, but back to you guys.
Okay, thank you so much, Valentine. Your presentation was very much informative, and I'll delve now into the questions that are coming from our audience, and also the question that we had prepared prior to this. So you've already mentioned about going into the future of AI with the bias that we have, and if I quote one person, this is Christian Loom, from the Human Rights Data Analysis Group based in San Francisco. She said, when the data we are feeding the machines reflect the history of our own unequal society, we are in effect asking the program to learn our own bias. So maybe the question that I can just ask directly in regards to this is, with all these fundamental issues that are associated with biased data that is affecting the Black community, are we really ready to move into the next phase of AI? And this question, maybe I will pose to both Valentine and Toren.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Toren, you want to give
that
a shot?
you're volunteering. Yeah. All right. So, in some ways, yes. In some ways, no. Just because we've seen in historical contexts like Africa and fintech, where we didn't get the quote unquote proper infrastructure to handle certain, like a more Western way of banking. So we came up with our own way, which was mobile banking, using our phones. And we managed to become the experts in that, and now the Western world is coming in to follow suit, and they're learning from us. So in some ways, no, we, there's as we get to the next step in AI, we may not need to um, have this step figured out, but you need to figure out the steps. You need to understand how you are, what the problems is in the last step, and overcome them. And that needs things like faster processing of models and the ability to ask different and better questions of your data. It requires an understanding of the consequences when you don't actually do it right. Things like the Australian government with their welfare programs, or many of the compass data from the recidivism programs that are used by judges right now for figuring out bail. We need to understand and learn why they failed, who should go forth and, I should say, be responsible and held accountable for those kinds of systems. And then, of course, understand how to circumvent them. And that will help us through in the next phase.
Okay, thank you so much. Valentin, you have something to add on before we move to the next question?
No, so I would add, I see in the chat, Brittany mentioned that, we need more perspectives involved in creating and testing these algorithms. And I think I totally agree with that analysis. And yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Moving to the question by Kwanzaa, I hope I pronounced the name well. Can you say more about AI, how AI is being used to simulate the effects of drugs? Maybe if you can take just 1 or 2 minutes to say something about that, if you have any understanding to that.
Yeah, so I wouldn't call myself, an expert in the use of, AI in health. Actually, my brother is here today, and he's, more of an expert. And and I'm sure he had a chuckle when I started talking about AI use in healthcare. But basically, one example would be AlphaFold, which I just described. So on the general way, more generally, diseases result in body functions not working because, some protein is not being produced, or some protein mutated, and a slightly different variant is being produced. Okay. And then usually drugs do the same thing. Drugs are fundamentally proteins that end up having a certain effect on the body. And what AI can then help us do is simulate when you try to create a drug, or you can, say when you try to create a protein. If we can predict the shape of a protein, we can then use AI to design proteins. And then those proteins will end up in drugs.
Okay, thank you so much. I think more conversation regarding to that we can have after this in our Clubhouse. I hope the link has been shared. If it's yet to be shared, one day you can help us to get the link for Clubhouse, where we shall be networking and sharing more on that. Going to the next question, which I will request, I don't know if Toren, you had already responded to that in the chat section. This was coming from Gabriel Dinda. Is there a legal framework to regulate the use of AI, or can the most powerful company or developer do as much as they can, maybe because there is no legal framework?
So I think I didn't get a chance to also put up my disclaimer that Valentine had, which was, I work for NVIDIA. I worked for other companies before that. And these are my own opinions and my own thoughts on these things, and reflect nothing on the companies themselves, because this one's a fun one. And I did mention this in the chat. basically, a while ago, they're limited or fledgling, I should say, legal frameworks that are coming out, as far as I know. They're looking at ways that how the implementation of machine learning or AI in their government structures harm people or help people, and how they are used, whether they be human in the loop or fully autonomous. And they're coming out with rules and regulations on that. But that's for governments. In terms of corporations, corporations have been pretty, they are allowed to do whatever best fits their culture. And their culture is what will dictate how their AI systems will be implemented, if they will be implemented, and that will be very much corporate by corporate on policies. So right now, as you know, I said, if you have a way of saving costs or making certain enabling certain lines of businesses that weren't possible before, yeah, a company can come in and developer can come in and do as much as they can, but there's more limits coming down the road, which will be, in some ways helpful, in some ways a little bit harmful.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Maybe we can have
So
another
I
question.
can add quickly there.
Valentine.
I just wanted to add quickly there that, so I think, I agree with Torin, and corporations, their primary incentive is profit. And sometimes that is at odds with fairness. And I think there really needs to be a big discussion about, having some form of regulation on top of that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I'm also a student of monitoring and evaluation, and there is something that we call participatory decision making. And in that regard, we had a question coming from one of us asking if we have enough people, enough Black people to be specific in the AI sector, and is there sufficient unbiased data about Black people in predictive modeling? This is very important because, as someone was saying, that maybe there are not enough Black people that have the knowledge regarding artificial intelligence. And if I quote directly, this was Rickmond Alake from this is a machine learning content creator. He said, the problem might not be that top tech companies don't want to hire Black talent. The problem could also be that there isn't substantial amount of Black talent to hire into the AI roles. So in your own opinion, do you think we have sufficient people in the Black community who are AI experts, or they can do the work?
So can you say who was that content creator? Can you say their name?
That is Rickmond Alake, machine learning content creator.
Okay. Yeah, so I have a slightly different. So I think, one, there are not enough Black people in AI, but I think the problem is more than just there are not enough Black people trained in AI. I think that would be a very convenient way to justify the lack of Black people in AI. I think it's a very, sophisticated problem. So, for example, one of the things is the few people you have the few Black people you have in AI, make them want to stay. Don't create toxic environments for them, because if you do, they end up leaving, and you don't end up getting more. So I think there are a lot of factors at play here, and I think we should do more. One, we should educate more Black people in AI, but we should also educate people in AI to be more open to mentor Black people, to be more open to work with Black people, and to be more open to not create toxic environments for Black people. And on the data side, yes, the data is biased, and because it reflects the person who created that data. And we should be careful when looking at data, and we should always ask the question, okay, what can go wrong? And then be proactive, not wait for some researcher out there to find problems in the model and then fix it, but really proactively look what problems can happen with my model and fix before you push it out there.
Okay, thank you so much. Maybe Toren, if you have something you want to add.
Yeah. So this is a fun and complex issue. In my previous life, I was in future technologies, especially towards workforces and user interactions with computers. And one of the things that they teach you to do is to ask the why. So the real question is, why do we want more Black people in AI? For us, not just because it's a really lucrative field, not just because it's a cool thing to say, but I think it's because we want our perspectives and concerns elevated at the decision-making level as people come to build out these models, right? If you have a bunch of, let's just say, male white kids building a marketing model, guess who they know how to market to? Or, even like as you get less and more less homogeneous than that, you can widen your spread. But if there's not a face there that can raise concerns of, hey, that might be offensive, or hey, that's not really reaching the point, it creates challenges.
Okay, thank you so much. I know there is a lot of interruptions right now because people have already switched to Clubhouse, where we shall be having around 30 minutes of chat on some of the issues that we might not have addressed in this discussion. If I have not asked your question, you forgive me because of time, not because I don't like you or because I'm biased. For those who are still interested in this discussion, they would like to network with the team here. You are invited to join the Clubhouse with the link that has been shared in our chat. Yes, shared by Wendia. You're welcome on the other side. But anyway, thank you so much for creating some time to join us tonight, today, and this afternoon from whichever part of the world that you are. It is exciting to start this conversation, picking one of the quotes from one of the famous Pan-Africans is that we should join the dinner table. We should invite ourselves on the dinner table rather than waiting for someone else to address our problems as the Black community. I really thank you so much for making this easy for me to facilitate. And I look forward to meeting with all of you in the Clubhouse. Thank you so much, and I see you there.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your expertise and your insights. Looking forward to the conversation. We'll see you guys in Clubhouse for those who are able to join us.
Okay, thank you.